Hello everybody! Today I will be doing a part 2 of my first video, drawing my OCs in cultural clothing. I wanted to try it again, but this time with a few of my villain characters. Like before, I will be putting 3 of my book characters into the ethnic attires of the countries that their heritage takes inspiration from. I'd like to add a quick disclaimer that I had a harder time doing research for this one. It was difficult to find good articles outside of Wikipedia, and I'm no historian, so I can't promise everything in this video is accurate, especially my pronunciation. Apologies for that in advance. Anyway, let's get started. First, I'm going to start with one of my favorite characters, Dahlia. Dahlia Zhenghuan is a 17-year-old with a love for danger. I won't go into any more detail for YouTube guideline purposes. She's overzealous, envious, and loves a sharp blade. In the Joseon era of Korea, the most popular dress for women was the hanbok. The women's hanbok consists of several layers. The jeogori is the short jacket you see on the front. It's characterized by its large sleeves. The chima is the long, wide skirt. Perfect for twirling, I'd imagine. Over that is the po, which is a jacket. The hanbok can be traced back to the Three Kingdoms period, from 57 BCE to 668 CE. It was strongly influenced by China, but over time it became unique and distinctly Korean. The Joseon era is widely considered the golden age of hanboks. Here you can see that I have completed my sketch layer, and now I'm working on the line art. This is a fun step because I get to use my favorite brush. I love the pencil texture. Once I get those tricky hands done, I can continue on to the rest of the clothing. Don't worry, I'll fix the size of them later once I realize they look like those plastic baby hands that TikTokers have. Luckily for me, the hanbok is not too difficult to draw, and the large skirt makes for a simple silhouette. She has a scowl because the only way Dahlia would wear this is if someone forced her. She likes to wear things she can fight in. The hair is another thing I need to fix. Because I'm working on a larger canvas, all of my brushes need to be bigger. But which I completely forgot to do with the brush I used for my hair. The line art is so thin you can barely see it, but I have an easy fix for this. I copy the layer and move it a few pixels to the left, doubling the lines. If you zoom in, you can see a little gap, but it isn't noticeable if you're looking at the full picture. So yeah, Dahlia isn't exactly a good guy. Although she does have a fascination with the protagonist M, which kinda helps her out. So what is it that makes Dahlia so scary, despite her collection of weapons? After all, she's just a small 17-year-old girl. The answer to that is her mage ability. Dahlia is a puppeteer. She can push her consciousness into the bodies of others with a rather large range. This allows her to control the bodies of others and easily manipulate people. Wouldn't it be scary to watch yourself doing things outside of your control, like a spectator? Of course, every magic use has its side effects. She leaves her own body vulnerable, typically under the watch of her fellow villains that she works with. It also causes a splitting migraine, which definitely sucks. Dahlia is a member of the Hex, a rogue organization of spellcasters and mages, fighting for the ability to freely use their magic in a country where their existence is illegal. Which sounds like a good thing on the surface, but their methods are rather extreme. They want to wipe out humans to create a purely magic race, with no laws regarding magic safety. Of course, Dahlia would love a society where she can freely practice her, hobbies. But innocent people would probably not like that. After all, they want to live. Now I'm working on shading and running out of things to say. As I record this, I'm currently fighting my cat over the computer. She likes to hit all the keys. The airplane mode one is her favorite. Anyway, back to Dahlia. I've begun the rendering process, giving her face shadows and highlights. This has always been the part I struggle most with. Because my digital art is self-taught, there's obviously a lot of things I still need to practice. That's what makes art human. The reference photos show a lot of folds, so I make sure to include that as I begin to render the clothing. It's safe to say that like Malik, purple is Dahlia's signature color. Because Dahlia's hair is so dark, shading it is actually really easy, like easier than most of my other characters. Don't get me started on M, having to render multiple colors. For someone who hates social interaction, she sure is attention-seeking. I've now gotten to the final steps, starting with coloring in the line art. Sorry that some clips may have been jumpy. I was having a lot of technical difficulties with my tablet and had to delete some footage. The screen has a hobby of randomly going black, and I had to completely unplug it to get back on. Fun stuff. I also went back in and added in the highlights to the clothes because I realized I had yet to do it. Once I finished coloring in the line art, I began with the background, which gave me an incredibly hard time, and I cut out all of the frustration of brushstrokes not loading in. I'm not kidding, it took like 10 minutes for a single stroke to load. I was about to smash my computer. Eventually I changed brushes and got it to work, and now I'm finished. Thank goodness. My next character is Dahlia's best friend and the questionable morally gray character of the book, Ace. Well, that isn't his real name. It's just one of the many he's adopted over the years of changing identities with every job he takes on as a mercenary. The name he had before being swept into the world of crime was Leopold Fang. His mother was white, but his father is what would have been the equivalent to Chinese in my book. Because my book roughly takes place in the 18th century, that means that China is in the Qing dynasty. Here's a quick history lesson on the Qing dynasty. After the fall of the Ming dynasty, the Manchus swept in to take Beijing, beginning Manchu rule over China. The Manchu kinda left Chinese culture alone and kept their own culture separate, but there was one thing that is significant to Chinese clothing: the banning of the Hanfu. Can you guys tell I'm getting more confident in my scripting and editing? Because I'm pretty proud of myself. Anyway, the Hanfu was established in the Han Dynasty, which was from 206 to 220 BCE, so it's very old. With each dynasty, the styles changed, but the Hanfu remained incredibly popular. That is, until it was banned in the Qing dynasty. I know I said earlier that the Manchus were laid back about assimilation, but they still had to establish dominance and prevent resistance. And the Hanfu, a traditional ancient Chinese outfit, was considered cultural resistance, so it was banned, and anyone who wore it faced severe punishments, including execution. So what did people wear instead? This was the introduction of the Changshan style. Women wore qipaos and men wore the Changshan, which was based off Manchu clothing and incredibly popular. The literal translation of Changshan is a long shirt or gown, because that's basically what it is. It's a long robe with a mandarin collar, long sleeves, and Chinese frog buttons. Although it's not often worn in mainland China today, it can still be seen at traditional ceremonies and events. Typically, you wouldn't see a Changshan in black because it symbolizes evil and destruction. It's typically what the dead are buried in. But Ace is a bad guy, so it's fitting. You also wouldn't catch him dead in most other colors. So I'm giving him a really dark blackish red Changshan. Now, what's Ace's deal? Ace was born into nobility as the youngest of 3 sons. However, the company that Ace's father owned had an incident and quickly shut down, leaving them in poverty. For months, the Fangs tried to keep appearances, but their dwindling money was beginning to show. Ace's father never wanted a 3rd child, so he kind of blamed all their financial problems on having to support a family of 5 that he didn't ask for. So his brothers were sent away to a boarding school, and Ace, well, his father told his mother that Ace was going to school too, but Ace was abandoned in the middle of nowhere with no way to get back home. His next father figure was a famous mercenary that people labeled the Death Broker. Now, he wasn't exactly the dad Ace needed, but he was the closest thing Ace had to family, whether or not that was a good thing. Ace was raised to be a mercenary and has spent his whole life struggling with attachment issues and identity crises. Fun! He joined the Hex when their leader promised a fortune if he helped them reach their goals. That's sort of Ace's surface level goal, to live a solitary life on an island of money. After all, that's what he was taught to want and what he grew up really needing. But deep down, Ace wants a family of his own. He wants to be the dad he never had. Of course, that's not something he advertises. It kinda gets away in the brooding nature he has. At this point, I'm changing the eye size and finishing drawing them. Next, I'm beginning the rendering process. If you watched my last video, you can probably guess I'm not a fan of any of this video's pieces either. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I hold myself to some high standards. Unfortunately, I only seem to produce a good piece in my eyes every 3 years, so it's going to be a while before my next one. I got kinda lazy with the rendering because I kinda just wanted this piece to be done. Best Content Creator Award goes to me. I actually do really enjoy making videos, it's just that if I don't immediately like a piece, I hate it for the entirety of making it. Also, as I'm watching back the footage, I'm contemplating giving Ace some stubble. I think he could pull it off like one of those unkempt kind of looks. I know what you're thinking. This commentary is riveting, and Bethany really knows how to script. Thank you, thank you. I'll get my plaques in no time. I'm just about finished now. I only have to do a little coloring of the line art because the black is already the right color for his clothing. Oh my goodness, I forgot to render his hair. It literally just slipped my mind. Oh well, this just won't go on the Instagram. Problem solved. You know the gist by now. I move on to give a basic color gradient background, and I'm finished. Finally, we're onto a villain of a different kind, Emperor Cohen Reyes. Cohen is the leader of the main state in my book, Exosia, and he isn't a very benevolent one. When the government was unstable, he swept in to take the throne, and he holds a tight leash to avoid losing it like the emperor before him. He's greedy, hypocritical, and just plain cruel and exploitive to the lower class and the magic users of Exosia. Very uncool. But you know what is cool? Mexican culture. When the Spanish colonized Mexico, they established the hacienda system. Spanish people owned large plots of land that would be worked by indigenous people and mestizos, which is someone of Spanish and indigenous descent. Charros, I know I'm not pronouncing it right, I physically cannot roll my R's, I'm sorry, were essential in managing cattle. They weren't allowed to dress the same as the Spanish, so they developed their own distinct clothing. Now, technically, Charros were a lower class and considered inferior by the Spanish, and Cohen is an emperor, so not lower class. But I don't feel like drawing him in the Spanish clothing worn in colonial Mexico. It's not as interesting, and also Cohen isn't Spanish, he's Mexican. So he gets a charro suit, which is revered today because it was worn during the Mexican War of Independence and is currently worn in formal events like holidays and cultural events. It's also worn by mariachi bands. The charro suit is made up of long pants with designs on the side and short jackets with lots of embroidery, which is typically depicting plant life, Aztec culture, or other themes. I finished the line art and I'm beginning to color. Originally, I was gonna have him wear navy, but I liked some of the lighter suits I saw on websites, and he's a big fan of gold, so I went with a more cream color. There isn't a lot of background on Cohen because he took the throne before my protagonist was born, but she does have to interact with him a lot because of her own political profession. Safe to say she hates those meetings. M's country, Helianthius, is a tiny state that borders Exosia. For years, Cohen has been wanting to take it for his own because of its resources and largely magic population. Although magic users are illegal in Exosia, he certainly bends the rules to ensure he can have the benefits of magic at his side. For example, he's in his 60s, but he has a spellcaster or mage in order to keep him looking a little younger. He also established the Royal Coven, which are the only 12 spellcasters in the entire country to be legally allowed to use their magic. As long as they are serving Cohen, that is. Here's a fun fact. The tongue is a muscle, and when we are toddlers learning how to speak our first language, we develop that muscle around that language. And when we learn a new language, our muscles have trouble with accents and pronunciation because they aren't used to different muscle movements when speaking. That's why native speakers struggle with the
R.
in Spanish, or why people who speak East Asian languages might struggle with the English L sound. The only way to get better is to practice. Clearly, I haven't done that. I'm in high school, guys. My Spanish isn't great. Here you can see that I'm adding in that embroidery with a leaf stamp brush because I'm lazy, and of course, it's in gold. With some final details to the suit, I can start giving the clothing some rendering. I work on shading the suit, add in his belt buckle, and begin drawing the eyes. This time, I plan to actually render his hair. Here's a little description of Cohen. When he talked, M couldn't help but stare at his fish lips. Clearly he had insisted a spellcaster plump them, and clearly neither of them had a mirror when doing so. His hair needed a fresh dye, as his roots were gray. His illusionist struggled to keep up with his wrinkles as he continued to express his words with great enthusiasm. M wrinkled her nose. There was an intoxicating smell around him, like he bathed in cologne. It was something so strong and unnatural that M couldn't identify. Besides, M could really only identify plants and poisons, if only it was the latter. It's that time again where I color in the lines of his face, clothing, and hair, then the background. I was scared of this part. Luckily, it wasn't as bad. It took a little time to load, but at least it didn't crash my computer. Well, it did, but only a little bit. With that, I am finished. I had a really fun time making this video and showcasing 3 more beautiful cultures through their clothing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like or share your thoughts in the comments to help me out. Thank you for making it to the end, and have a lovely rest of your day.